right, hello everyone. How is everybody today? Hope you're having a wonderful start to your week. Hope you are not experiencing too cold of weather right now. I know a lot of people over on the East Coast have had a lot of snow, a lot of ice and all of that. So hopefully you are staying warm today. But in honor of all of those ice and snowstorms, we're going to be doing some acrylics and we're actually going to be sculpting them out. But I'm going to show you guys some basic techniques, and then we're going to do a dimensional, kind of an icy wintry design. So in honor of those people that had to stay in or had to go out and shovel snow that you weren't expecting, that is what our design is going to be in honor of today. So to get started, I'm just going to go ahead and trim up my nails here. Now, whenever I work on sculpting, whether it's with acrylics or hard gels, even with putting a tip on, I always like to shorten up the natural nails, but especially when I am sculpting, I do shorten them up. I'm going to show you guys here, probably to about the length of what my actual nail is right here. So having that little bit of a shorter free edge actually helps when you're putting a form on. I know a lot of times people think that if you leave the free edge a little bit longer, that you're going to be having an easier time putting your forms on. But it's actually the opposite, because I think sometimes when you have that extra free edge, that excess length that you're working on, sometimes that form doesn't fit right up flush underneath that nail. So by cutting the nails a little bit shorter like I'm doing here, that's going to actually help you when you are sculpting. And I know you guys, sculpting I think is kind of a lost art these days. I think there's a lot of techniques using the full cover tips and using polygel and things like that. But sculpting, there's just some things that you can do sculpting acrylic that you can't do with anything else. So today I'm going to show you some techniques on sculpting, and then we will get into a really fun dimensional look with our glitters and confettis and all kinds of fun stuff. So let's go ahead and just start by prepping our nails. And anytime you prep, let's see, somebody says, my sculpting forms never stay in place properly or some products seep through. Okay, stick with us here. I can't read who that was, but make sure that you stick with us here. I'm going to show you some ways of actually putting the forms on so that they will stick. Now, if you're working just on the trainer hand, that I recommend just doing one form at a time, because they don't always stick as well to the trainer hand as they do to a real finger. So I'm going to show you some tricks with that. But we're going to start by prepping our nails. And you notice that I was going through pushing back the cuticles. Now, I always do that even when I'm working on my trainer hand, because it's going to get you into the routine and it's going to keep you in the routine when you're actually working on a real client. So even if you're just practicing on the trainer hand, still make sure that you are pushing back the cuticles. Guys, I need to readjust my camera here just a little bit. I did an online class here yesterday. So if you guys were part of that online class, I hope you enjoyed it. But I had to readjust my camera for that class. So I think we're back on track here with the camera. All right. Now, when we do our prep and we remove shine, I'm going to use my electric file and I'm going to use my medium grit sanding band. Now, you guys, what do you see wrong with this sanding band? Let me know in the chat. What do you see wrong with this sanding band? I am going to change this one out, but I want to see if you guys have been paying attention to my live stream. So let me know in the chat if you can see anything wrong with this sanding band. So I am going to change this out. I always change out my sanding band for every service, whether it's on myself, whether it's on my client, whether it's on my trainer hand. I always change that out because, take a look at that. You can see on this one here, this one is really worn down. I've actually used this for many, many nails on my trainer hand. But when we change that out to a new one, you're going to see that the new bit, you guys, these are the same bit to begin with. But this one on the right here, that has the proper grit to it. It hasn't been worn down like this one. If you try to use this old worn down bit on all of your clients, you're not going to be able to prep that surface properly and file that nail. So you want to make sure that you are changing that out for every nail, or sorry you guys, not for every nail, for every service. So we're going to just, oops. And you guys, as I'm telling you this, I didn't change out my bit. All right, so I'm just going to push down in the middle on that mandrel, slide that bit off, and then we're going to change that out to our new sanding band. Now I'm going to be working at about 5,000 RPMs, and you can work, depending on your e-file, really anywhere from 2,000 to, I would say, 5,000 at the max RPMs, just enough to create a slight texture on the surface of the nails. You don't want to be using any pressure. You're just basically making contact with that bit to the nail and then creating a little feathering motion all the way through. So again, I'm not grinding away. Can you hear that difference? Do you see how much of that nail came off? If I used pressure and I grind away at that nail, that's going to cause damage on the nail. That is what we do not want to do. So again, just lightly, basically making contact and all the way up around the cuticle, and then feathering gently through to lightly remove the shine. And what this does is it creates a little bit of texture on the nail, and it also helps to break up any surface oils that are on the nail. So just creating that texture and breaking up those oils. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dust off the nails, get as much of that dust off of there as I can. And you guys, I am going to adjust my camera one more time. There we go. Okay, I hope that's going to be, okay, that looks a little bit better to me. So I want to make sure you guys can see. Okay, so once we dust off the nails, we're going to grab our swipe. Swipe is our cleanser. We pump a little bit of that up onto our manicure brush. And I'm going to dust off those nails using that swipe. And the swipe is going to clean that nail surface. It's going to help to get rid of any germs or bacteria. And it's also going to help get rid of those last little dust particles or anything else that we don't want on the nail. And it's going to leave us with a nice, clean, dry surface on there. Now, next thing we're going to use is our protein bond. Protein bond, as you can see on there, it's a non-acid. It says non-acid adhesion. So this is a non-acid bonder. It's not a primer. Primers tend to have methacrylic acid to them. So that's why we say it's a no or non-acid adhesion, because it doesn't have that methacrylic acid to it. So we're going to brush this on, and I start from the center of the nail. I work out to the sides, and then I work back to the cuticle area. The reason that I work like that is so this way I'm not going to flood my product onto the skin or touch that cuticle at all. Even though it is a non-acid product, it still is a chemical, and with any chemical you want to make sure that you're not coming in contact with the skin. So whether it's your protein bond, whether it's your acrylic, your gel polish, any of those products, you want to make sure that you're keeping off the skin so that you can avoid any contact dermatitis or allergic reactions. So we're going to do 2 coats of our protein bond. When I sculpt my extensions, whether it's acrylics, hard gels, or even full cover tips, I always like to work with 2 coats of protein bond just to make sure I've got that great coverage over the nail, and I'm going to have really good adhesion all the way through. Now, could you try 1 coat? You could try 1 coat, but if you have clients that may be problem lifters, you don't want to have to worry about finding out if they are a problem lifter. So that's why I always do 2 coats of protein bond on all of my clients, just to make sure I've got good adhesion. Now, we're going to be working with our forms today, and somebody was saying that they were having challenges getting the forms on or getting those forms to stay on. So I'm going to show you how to apply a form so that it's going to fit properly and it's going to stay on. So we're going to peel off that back. Now I'm going to, as you can kind of watch as I'm working here, notice that I don't use my fingers a lot to touch that form. So if I'm working with that form and I'm touching that a lot, that's actually going to remove some of the sticky, because I'm getting oils and maybe a little dust and things like that on the back of my form from my skin. So you want to make sure that as you're working with these, that you're not trying to do a lot of touching of the back side. You don't want to touch that sticky layer, because that's going to make it not want to stick to that natural nail. Okay, so I am going to grab a clean, fresh form that I haven't touched, and I'm going to peel it off from the top. And then notice that I mainly hold it from the top. So again, this area up here isn't what's going to adhere. On the sides is what's going to adhere to the fingers. So that's the area that you want to make sure you're not touching. Now I am going to take that little tab out of the center, and I'm going to put that right on the back. So stick that right down on the back. And what that's going to do is that's going to give your form a little bit more of a firmness. So when you do roll that curve into it and kind of press that form in, it's going to stay like that and it's going to feel a little bit more secure. Now, notice again, I'm holding that form from inside and I actually kind of hold it right there where that little tab is. So again, I'm not touching the sticky side of it. I'm going to pinch that form together and I'm going to just pinch these two little silver tabs together nice and even. So pinch those nice and even. If you're going to be creating a square nail, leave that end open. So you're going to create a little bit more of a tube. So again, that end is open. Now today we're going to be creating a little bit more of a tapered square, almost a coffin shape. So for that shape or a stiletto or an almond, I like to pinch the end of my form together and that's going to help to create a little bit more of a tapered look with that form. Okay, now we're going to pinch this just a little bit shorter because I'm not going to be creating an excessively long nail. I'm going to bring that product down to where I pinch the end of that form, so just a little bit shorter. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, on a real client, normally I would open up, there's a little perforation at the top. On a real client, I open that top perforation up. On my trainer hand, a lot of times I just leave that closed because sometimes it just fits a little bit better on the trainer hand that way. But on a real client, you want to open that form up. Now, I'm going to actually show you guys on my real nail here because sometimes it's a little tricky on the trainer hands. But when you're putting the form on, I'm going to open that up. I don't just take that form and just shove it right up underneath that nail. Because first of all, if you just shove that form under there and try to push that up under there, a lot of times what can happen is you can actually push into that hyponychium, which is that skin underneath. You guys, I'm going to come in really close here. I want you to see on my ring or on my middle finger here, I have actually a little bit of an extended hyponychium. You can see that that skin is actually growing up with my nail. So if I were to take that form and just shove that right up underneath there, I could actually be pushing into that hyponychium, and that's actually going to be painful because that is a very delicate skin underneath the nail. So what you want to do instead, now I'm going to do this on our trainer hand just so we can get our form on here. But instead of just shoving that form straight up underneath there, what you want to do instead, if we look at this from the side, you're going to start with that form at a slight downward angle, okay? You're going to come right underneath, and actually, you guys, I'm going to grab a new form because I was kind of pinching that one a little bit too much as I was showing you on my real nails here. So again, let's take that little tab out of the back, put that on there, pinch our two little tabs together here, open up that top perforation. Now, again, looking from the side view, we're going to come at a slight downward angle. So again, we're not just shoving that straight in, we're going to come from underneath. We're going to bring that form up and we're going to catch that free edge. So right up underneath that free edge, and then we're going to lift up on the end, and you're going to see how that form starts to come straight out from that nail. By lifting up on the end, it's going to tuck that form right up underneath that free edge, and it's not going to put a gap under there. Now, we're going to look at this straight on. You can see that form is a little bit crooked. If I were to take, do I have an orange wood stick? If I were to take an orange wood stick or my brush or something like that, line that straight up with the finger. Do you see how the form doesn't line up straight? Right now it's a little bit crooked. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of opening up those sides a little bit. Shift that so it's nice and straight. And again, kind of rocking that up underneath that natural nail. Secure that down. Now that's going to be straight in line with the finger, so our nail is going to get sculpted nice and straight. I'm just going to pinch that form together a little bit more underneath. And then if we take a look underneath here, you can see that there's no gap in between that natural nail and our form. Okay, if there is, again, open up on those sides and just gently lift up on the end so that it brings it flush right up underneath that natural nail. Okay, now you guys, I want to show you here really quickly. Not every form is going to fit every nail. So if we take a look, I want to show you something that is actually, it's really important that you understand this so that you're not getting those gaps underneath your form. You want to make sure that form is flush up underneath that nail so that you don't have product squeezing underneath, okay, and in between the two. So you want to make sure that, again, you're rocking that form up flush underneath that natural nail so that there's no gap. So if we look at my nail here, you can see there's a gap in between there. There's a gap between that natural nail and the form. This is, first of all, why I do like to shorten up my natural nails to about this length so that you're not having to struggle and worry about that extra free edge. But the other thing you can do is if you have a nail that has a little bit of a tighter C curve, so my pointer finger here has a pretty good C curve. It's not very flat at all, but it has a really good tight C curve. So what you can do is if you take that form, take that little tab out of the center, snip right across the top of the YN logo, square that off. Now we can take that form and we can set that right behind there to create a little bit more of a or of a square form. Again, pinch that tab together at the end. Now I can again get that right up underneath my free edge, pinch that together, rock that up. And now if we take a look, that form is going to fit flush right up underneath my free edge. There's not going to be a gap underneath there. Now, I think it looks like there's a gap, but I think you guys, you're seeing my natural nail. So I promise you there's not a gap underneath there. That little bit of a, hang on one second here, that little bit of a, that line right through there is my natural nail. Okay, so there's no gap underneath there. So again, you want to make sure that you are completely getting that form flush up underneath there so that you don't have any product sliding in between there. Okay. All right, you guys, if you have any questions, you can definitely put those into the chat. I am happy to answer those questions. If I don't see your questions, we've got a great team of moderators here that are going to be able to help answer some of your questions. So I'm glad that you guys are with us. I'm hoping that you're enjoying our lesson today. If you are, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And somebody says, wait, that is what I've been needing to do for my forms. I am so excited. I'm so happy that you guys have learned a new technique today. We actually have a lot of videos here on our channel on different techniques. We have some other videos about customizing different ways with your forms. So if you're struggling with your form application, first of all, make sure to subscribe to our channel and then make sure to check out some of those videos here because we've got lots and lots of education for you. Now, speaking of education, let's talk about our acrylic. So we're actually going to work with acrylic today. We're going to be sculpting and building this nail out. So when I work with my acrylic, I want to make sure that I'm getting a good consistency to it. So to get a good consistency, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my brush, and I want you guys to see this. I'm going to show you nice and close here. Do you see how my brush has a little bit of a crimp right through there? The ferrule, the silver part here, it's not round. It actually is flattened right through here. So there's that little crimp in the brush. That's going to make your brush come to more of a wedge shape like this, okay? When you're working with your brush, you want to make sure that you're using more of that flat side of your brush. You're not going to be picking up your product on the edge. So if we take a look here, see how it's nice and flat? We're going to be picking up our pearl right here on that front point where it's darker color. We're not going to be using the edge of our brush. Now, same thing when we dab out our extra monomer. I'm going to just press my brush into my liquid. I'm going to tap the back side of that brush. And what that does is that pushes all the liquid out to the front side, okay? So it's going to drain out some excess and push the liquid to the front side. Now, we want to use the front side then to pick up our pearl. So we're actually going to turn that brush over, and then we're going to come into our powder, and we're going to keep our brush at about a 45-degree angle. We're going to do a press and pull motion. So I'm not just going to stab my brush down into the powder, okay? Actually, let me show you guys. So what happens if you just stab your brush down into the powder is you're going to get product on both sides of the brush. We don't want that because when we set that down onto the nail, actually you guys, I'm not going to set that onto my nail, but when you set that onto that nail, if you've got product on both sides, do you see how it's just going to stick to your brush? It's not going to actually completely release. So then you may end up working with your product and it's going to stick in your brush and it's going to clog up your brush. Okay. So what we want to do instead, I'm going to tap my powder down. I'm going to press my brush into my liquid, dab out the back side. I'm going to turn that over. Instead of just jabbing that right down in there, I'm going to do more of a press and pull motion in one. So press and pull, and see how that keeps that product away from the back side of my brush. It just keeps the product on the front side of my brush, and that's exactly what we want. Okay, so again, we're going to tap the back side of our brush. we're going to press and pull, and we're going to bounce, bounce, bounce. Okay, now depending on how much liquid we left in our brush is going to determine how much powder we're able to pick up. So if we want to pick up a really large pearl, I'm just going to gently tap the back side of the brush once, and then I can press and pull, bounce, 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 and I can pick up a nice large pearl. Okay, if I want to pick up more of a medium-sized pearl, I can tap once, tap twice, and that's going to drain out even more liquid. And then I'll press and pull, bounce, bounce. So maybe only 2 bounces. So this way I'm going to adjust and get a more of a medium-sized bead. Now if I want an even smaller bead, I'm going to press, 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 even maybe press one more. And then again, press and pull, bounce, bounce, and pick up an even smaller pearl. So you can adjust how big of a pearl, large, medium, or small, you're going to pick up just by adjusting the amount of liquid you leave in your brush and then how much you press into your powder. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and actually start our application. Now, before I actually put my pearl onto the nail, I want to show you another thing on the form. So if we take another form and we pick up our pearl, now you guys, make sure that you're always wiping your brush in a clean spot on your table towel. I've actually cut up my table towels into smaller pieces here, so it's just easier for me. So make sure that you're using a clean spot on your table towel. But if I were to press and pull, bounce, 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 if I take that pearl and I just set that right down onto my form right away, do you see how quickly that product is going to start to kind of melt out? That's going to flow, it's going to run, and it's probably going to get a little bit out of control and kind of clog up my brush even. So I'm going to clean out my brush there. So when I'm working on my forms, I want my product to be a little bit more in control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this to more of a clay form. So I'm going to, again, press my brush into my liquid, tap the back side of my liquid. I'm going to press and pull, bounce, bounce, bounce. I'm going to pick up that pearl and just wait for that powder to absorb into it. Then I'm going to drain it. I'm going to set it onto my table towel and count 1, 2, 3. After 3, then I can set that down onto my form. I can use a little bit of pressure, wipe out my brush. My product is not going to run, it's not going to flow, it's not going to get out of control, but I can now use my brush to mold that into place and shape that where I want it instead of having to chase after it. And Matilda says, you just subbed. Thank you so much, you guys. Any of you that subscribed today, we appreciate it. If you subscribed in the past, we appreciate it. And I'm glad that you did, because that means that you are looking for education and you're wanting to learn how to do nails. So this is a great place to do that. So thank you for joining our community. All right, let's go ahead and actually sculpt out this extension now. So now you guys know how to bring that product to clay form and have a little bit more control over it. We're going to press and pull, bounce, bounce, bounce. I'm going to wait for that powder to absorb. I'm going to drain 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to now set that onto our form. I'm going to put some pressure on there. I'm going to wipe out my brush. I'm going to use the body of the brush to press that product even from side to side. So it's the same thickness from side to side. Now I'm going to use the edge of my brush to tuck in. And I'm going to press that bulk that I just tucked in up into that corner. Straight in on the side. Now I'm going to press, press, press all the way across. I'm going to use the edge of my brush to tuck in and then press, press, press up into that corner. Tuck in on the side, and then we're going to press, press, press across. And you guys, when I'm pressing, I'm just using pressure. I'm not trying to press and move at the same time. If you try to press and move at the same time, your pearl is going to get kind of mushed up. So again, pressing, tucking in on the sides with the edge of my brush, press, press, press. Okay, that's going to give us that nice even thickness all the way from one side to the other. I'm going to just blend this down, smooth that out towards the end. And if I need to, if we're going to go a little bit more coffin shape, I'm going to just start to tuck in towards that free edge, so towards that point of our form. Okay, so we've got our free edge created at this point. Now, when we work over, you can kind of see we don't have any thickness here. We're going to build structure from our cuticle nice and thin and tapered at the cuticle. We're going to build a little bit of thicker structure here through the stress area, and then we're going to taper that down to the free edge. Now, when we're working over the kind of doing that overlay, here when I was working with on my free edge, I kept that nail flat. When I'm working by the cuticle area, I'm going to angle the finger downward. So this way I can use the point of my brush to press out the cuticle area, get that really nice and thin and tapered, and then my product is going to flow down the length of the nail rather than down into the sides. So let me show you. So again, I'm going to pick up my pearl. Now, this time I do want my pearl to flow a little bit more. So this time I'm not going to press out and drain out that extra liquid. All I'm going to do is wait maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds, and then I'm going to set that onto the nail. Now you guys, I'm going to wait on this because I want you to see. Do you see how nice and smooth and pearl-like that bead looks? That's exactly what I want when I'm working up by the cuticle area. So if I pick up that pearl, press and pull, whoops, there's a little chunk of something in my powder there. Didn't want that. So again, press and pull, bounce, bounce, bounce. If you look really close, do you see how it starts out at a little bit more of an orange peel texture? And then it just melts out to more of that pearl look. That is exactly what we want. We want it to start out at that orange peel look and then melt out to that pearl look. So once it's at that pearl look, then you know that it's the proper consistency to add to your nail. So again, we're going to press and pull, bounce, bounce, bounce. I'm going to wait 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like a pearl. I've got my nail angled downward. I'm going to set that pearl down. I'm going to wipe out my brush just quickly. I'm going to use the point of my brush to press, press, and then I pivot my brush at the side. Press, press, pivot at the side. So now my product is flowing down the length of the nail. I'm going to just tuck in on those sides a little bit. I'm going to wipe out my brush, clean out my brush, pivot my brush again on the side. I'm going to blend out that side. Same thing, pivot my brush, bring it over to the other side, blend out that side, and then I'm just going to blend the edge of that pearl down towards the free edge. So just by doing those steps, I'm going to start kind of the structure of my nail. So again, when I was working at the cuticle area, I'm working at this angle here. Using my brush to press all the way around that cuticle area is going to get that nice and thin and tapered. Now, I want you guys to see something here from the front view. What I mean when I press, press, pivot is when I press that pearl down, I start in the center here. Let me come back just a little bit. Actually, let me come in nice and close. I press in the center, so I press, press, and then I pivot my brush. So I turn my brush on the side and I use my brush as almost a barrier on the side. So this way I'm not just pressing product out and it's not going to touch the skin. By using my brush and pivoting my brush on the side like that, it's going to keep everything nice and tapered all the way through that edge. Same thing on the other side. Press, press, pivot my brush on the side, keeping everything nice and tapered. Same thing when I'm brushing down through here. I don't just brush flat like this. I pivot my brush on the side, and again, if I turn this, you're going to be able to see I pivot my brush on the side, I blend that side down, so this way it's going to keep everything nice and thin and tapered on that edge, okay? All right, now, you can see we've got the start to our structure. We've got nice and thin by our cuticle area, a little bit thicker in our stress area. We've got a little bit of a low area and a little dip right down through here. I'm going to pick up one more pearl. Now this one, I'm going to do kind of a combination of that draining and kind of a combination of draining out that extra liquid, but then also keeping it a little bit on the wetter side. So I'm going to pick up my pearl. I'm going to just tap 1, 2. Drain out just that little bit of liquid, and then I'm going to turn my brush around. I'm going to set that down and blend back. Pivot my brush on the side, blend back, come back to the center, pivot my brush on the side, blend back up into that arch, wipe out my brush. Now I can use the body of my brush to press that product down through the free edge, blending that all the way down to the point. Wipe out my brush. I'm going to blend and wipe, blend, wipe, blend, wipe, blend, and wipe. So that way, you guys, as I'm blending this out, the reason that I blend and wipe is because anytime you're blending like that, you may pick up a little bit of that acrylic residue on your brush. So you want to make sure that you're wiping out that residue before you actually put that, before you go back to the nail. Because if you brush through that and pick up residue and you continue to brush, that residue is going to clog up your brush. Okay, so make sure that you do clean out your brush as you're working. Let's go ahead and do one more pink nail because I want to show you guys this all the way through kind of without stopping. So that way you can see the full application technique. And then I'm going to use some of these same techniques to create a dimensional glitter nail. So stick with us. Don't go anywhere, you guys. You don't want to miss out on all the glittery, sparkly things. So again, open up my form here. We're going to get that form right up underneath that free edge, rock that down, secure on the sides, pinch that free edge together. And you guys make sure if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, join our community. And yeah, Tara says, show me some love. Show me some love in the chat here. You guys, I want to see what you guys are thinking here. All right, so let's go ahead and sculpt this one out. Press and pull, bounce, bounce, bounce. I'm going to let that powder absorb. I'm going to drain 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to set that right down at my free edge. I'm going to come in nice and close so you can see this one. I'm going to use the body of my brush. I'm going to press that product out from side to side, wipe out my brush, tuck in with the edge of my brush, walk that product back up into the corner. Tuck straight in, walk up into the corner, straight in. We're going to come back across that nail, press, press, use the edge of my brush, tuck in on the side, press that bulk up into the corner. Tuck in on the side, up into the corner. We're going to press, press, press. And actually, I'm kind of pressing and pulling just a little bit. Press and pull, tuck in on the sides, press and pull, bringing that product down the length of my form, right down to that point that we pinched. Tapering a little bit in on the sides so that we can create a little bit more of a coffin shape. Again, tuck in on the sides, press, 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 in on the sides, and just gently blend all the way through. Now, if you need to, you can turn your brush on the side, tuck in on that free edge, but you guys don't waste your time trying to create the perfect free edge because that's something that you can easily file out with your electric file. So don't waste all of your time on that. I would rather you spend more time perfecting your lower arches down here and perfecting your thickness than perfecting that free edge, okay? All right, let's go ahead and somebody's asking, can you answer a question? You guys, if you have questions, you can put them into the chat. I do try to answer them, but I don't always see them while I'm teaching. So we do have a great team of moderators here that actually can help you answer questions as well. So yes, go ahead and put your questions in the chat. All right, we're gonna pick up our next pearl. This one, you guys, there's a little something, a little fuzz on my brush here. Hang on one second. Okay. Now, we are going to do one more pearl at our cuticle area. And again, we're going to angle that finger downward. I'm going to pick up my pearl. I'm going to press and pull, bounce, bounce, bounce. I'm going to wait for that pearl to just absorb the powder, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 seconds. Set that right at my cuticle area. I'm going to wipe out my brush, use the point of my brush to press, press, pivot into that corner. Press, press, pivot into the other corner, angling that brush or angling the finger down so that my product flows down the length, tapping around those edges. I'm going to wipe out my brush, pivot my brush, blend out those edges. Pivot on the other side, blend out the other edge, and just blend out the edge of that pearl so that I leave a little bit of that bulk right up in my stress area, creating a nice arch in the nail. Just going to blend all the way through. Oh my goodness, Smazzle70, thank you so much. We appreciate you very, very much. Thank you so much. Somebody said I saw a cat hair. Yes, you guys, actually I think that was probably a bristle from my brush. It wasn't a cat hair, but yes, I did see that too. All right, so we're going to pick up our third pearl here. We're going to press and pull, bounce, bounce. I'm going to just tap 1, 2. Drain out a little bit of that liquid. I'm going to set that right down in the low area, blend back, pivot my brush on the side, blend back, back to the center, pivot my brush on the side, blend back, wipe out my brush. Now I'm going to use the body of my brush to press that nail, pressing that product all the way down the length of the nail. Blend wipe, blend, wipe, blend, wipe, blend, wipe. And our nail is sculpted into the proper shape. Now, you guys, I've shown you how to create a solid color nail. What if we want to do a little bit more fun? What if we want to add some colors? What if we want to add some glitters? That is what I'm going to show you next. So we're going to take the same techniques that I've been showing you, the same way of picking up your pearl, same way of applying it, same way of applying your form, but now we're going to switch to our Speed Clear. So the product that I was using for our first two nails, that is our Cover Pink acrylic. That is an opaque color. It is a solid color. It's going to give you really good coverage. It's a great color for nude nails, or if you want to do a gel polish over the top of them, it gives you a great background. But we're now going to switch to our Speed Clear. Cover Pink is more of a medium setting product, whereas Speed Clear is a faster setting product. So we may have to work either a little bit quicker or even adjust the amount of liquid we have in our brush. So we're going to take our Speed Clear. We're going to pick up just the same as we did with our Cover Pink. So again, tap out our brush. We're going to press and pull, bounce, bounce, bounce. I'm going to allow that powder to absorb. I'm going to drain 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to set that right down on my free edge. Wipe out my brush. I'm going to press that evenly from side to side, tuck in on the edge, walk up into my corners, tuck in on the edge. I'm going to press that all the way across, kind of pressing and pulling down the length of the nail, tuck in, walk up into the corner, tuck in, walk that bulk up into the corner, tuck in, and we're going to just start to bring that down the length. Now at this point, I'm just kind of brushing that down the length just to make sure that I'm bringing that all the way down the length of the form, and I want to make sure that I'm creating a very, very thin layer at this point, because we're going to be adding some colors, we're going to be adding some glitters, and if I build my free edge too thick, what's going to happen is after I add my colors, I'm going to add a layer of clear over the top, and then I'm going to file. And if I add too much clear at this point and it's too thick, I'm going to end up filing off my colors. So I'm just creating a very, very thin layer. Now you guys, I'm going to show you one quick little trick here that I like to do. If I feel like my extension got a little too thin, I'm going to use my painting knife here. And if you have a painting knife, if you have a spatula, I'm just going to rock that right over the top of that free edge and basically cut off that excess that I don't need. So just a quick way of shortening your product while it is still pliable. And then I'm going to really press out that free edge again to make sure that it's nice and thin at that free edge. Okay. Now, again, we're going to be working with some glitters on this nail. So anytime I apply glitter to the nail, or any colors or any colored acrylics or anything like that, I always like to add a small pearl. So we're going to pick up a very small pearl, press, press, just a tiny little pearl like that. I'm going to set that right down at my cuticle area, and I'm going to blend that through the nail. I think I may pick up just a tiny little bit more. The reason that I add this little tiny pearl here is for a protective layer. So this way, when I add my glitters to the nail and my colors to the nail, they're not going to be right down on that natural nail. So when I go to file this nail off, or if I go to change out the color, I'm only going to be filing down to that clear layer. I'm not going to be filing down all the way to that natural nail. So make sure that if you're going to be doing dimensional designs, always apply a little bit of clear right on that natural nail. Now, you guys, we're going to be adding glitters here. The glitters I'm going to be using are, let's see, this one is Fame Orbit. So this is a small glitter, so kind of a fine glitter, really, really pretty. Then we also have, what else do we have here? We've got Former Freeloader. I love this one. This is a little bit of a chunkier glitter, so more kind of those rounded shapes. And then we've also got Weather Delay, which is what our nail is inspired by today. And all of the weather delays they're having out east, I'm sorry you guys that you're dealing with this. But this one is a really pretty kind of a chunky mylar. I absolutely love this one. And then I've got one more here. This one is called Stitches. And this one is kind of a longer rectangular glitter. So I've got all kinds of different colors here, all kinds of different shapes and cuts of glitter. Now, you could do a couple of different things. You could, let me grab a little dish here. You could actually mix your glitter and your acrylic together. So if you wanted to do something like that, I would use either a Dappen dish here if you're just going to be creating a little bit, or you can use one of our mixing jars. But when you're mixing, if you're going to actually mix your glitter in with your acrylic, you're going to do a 3-to-1 ratio, approximately. You don't have to measure exactly, but 3-to-1. So 3 parts acrylic to 1 part glitter. So when I mix glitters, I generally like to mix my smaller ones, and then I can maybe add in some of the larger, chunkier ones for accents. But if I want a full coverage, I'm going to do 3-to-1. Again, so 3 parts acrylic to 1 part glitter. We'll give that a quick stir. And then I like to test it. So I'm going to pick up a little pearl of this just to see, is my consistency right? Is my color right? And I think that looks just about right. Now, you can add a little bit more glitter. You can add more color if you need to. You can add more acrylic powder if you need to. So just depending on what you want that to look like. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to add just a tiny little bit more glitter. I think I want to make this just a little bit more bold. Now, if you are adding more glitter, you have to be careful that you're not adding too much, because you still need enough acrylic in there to be able to hold the structure, okay? So just make sure that if you do pick up a pearl, and let me grab a form here, and you set that down, you're still going to be able to have that proper consistency of acrylic. You don't want it too chunky or too dry feeling when you're working with those glitters in there. So this one looks just about right. So we're going to take that nail. Now, I've got my chunkier glitters that I'm going to use separately. So I'm going to start with my glitter acrylic mix here. I'm going to dab my brush. I'm going to pick up a small pearl of that glitter and acrylic mix. And I could drain out a little bit of that liquid if I don't want my product to flow, but if I do want it to flow, leave that liquid in there. So I'm just going to set this right down, and I actually like to cover up that natural, kind of that smile line area, and cover up a little bit of that natural area where it connects to the free edge. I'm just going to tap out the back side of that pearl, and then maybe tap or blend out the front side of that. And you guys, you can create solid coverage with this. You can create bits and pieces however you want to. But while that acrylic is still wet, I'm going to go back to some of my other chunkier glitters here. We're going to grab some of those, and I'm just using my brush. I don't have any product on my brush right now. I'm just using the residual moisture that's in my brush and touching those glitters or those little confettis in the jar. So just tapping those, picking up a few of those, and setting those into that wet acrylic. Now, if you are getting to the point where your acrylic is set and your glitters aren't actually adhering anymore, you can pick up another small pearl of the Speed Clear, so just another small pearl, and just brush that through. It's basically going to re-wet that surface, so now I can pick up some of my other glitters. I can add in those bigger, chunkier pieces, setting those down into that wet layer. Now, as you're creating these dimensional nails, you guys, a dimension is basically creating layers. It's creating layer on top of layer so that this color, the glitters, they're all deep down into that nail. And the more layers you add, the more depth you're going to see. So go ahead and layer this on, but again, very, very thin layers. And I'm going to show you guys this from the side in just a second. I'm going to add a few more little pieces of my glitters on here. Maybe just a little bit more right down here. Maybe a little bit right there. Okay, so at this point, I want you guys to see from the side view, this is still a very, very thin extension. We haven't built up the structure like we've got on this one just yet. It's still very thin. So if I were to just leave this nail like this, it would not have any thickness to it. It wouldn't have any structure, and it would probably break when I took my form off. Now, I also need to encapsulate my glitters because I do need to do some filing on this. And if I were to just go through and file right now, I would file off all of my glitter. So now we're going to go back to the same techniques that we did on our previous nails to do that overlay and to do our encapsulation. But we're going to be using our Speed Clear instead of our Cover Pink. And again, you guys, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join our community. It just helps us to be able to give you guys more free education here. So hit that subscribe button. Again, we're going to set our pearl down. That finger is angled downward. I'm going to press around my cuticle, pivot on the sides, tap in, press, press, pivot on the sides. I'm going to wipe out my brush here, pivot my brush on the side, blend out that edge, pivot on the other side, blend out that edge, and then blend through that arch. Pulling some of that product down, encapsulating all of that glitter, and then we're going to pick up our next pearl. I'm going to press and pull, bounce, bounce, bounce. Just tap just a little bit of that liquid out. Press and pull, blend back, blend back, blend back. Wipe out my brush. And again, just blending that product all the way down to the free edge. All right, blending all the way through. And our nail is sculpted. So now we would normally wait for our product to set up. We would go through and we would file in the structure and the shape. But you guys, if you need extra education on filing and finishing the nails, make sure to check out our YouTube channel here. I'm actually going to finish this next nail here that I already have filed out. So you guys don't have to sit and wait for this one to dry. But let me close up my glitters here. You guys always make sure that you're closing up your products so that you don't spill anything or you don't contaminate anything, to make sure everything stays nice and clean. Now, again, we are going to wait, or we're not going to wait for that one to dry. I am going to go over to our last nail that we've got on here. And actually, you guys, I've got a couple of things that I can show you. I'm gonna do one more quick little add-on design, something that we could actually add on to one of these. So let me we'll just take this one off here real quick. All right, maybe we'll take one of these off. Okay, so I do have another nail that is completed. So we've got that one. Let's take this one off here. Let's bring this one over. So this way you guys can see two finished looks on here. So I've got, again, a Cover Pink nail, a solid color nail. We've got our glitter design here. I am going to dust these both off. We're going to cleanse them with our swipe. Pump a little bit of that onto our manicure brush. Cleanse that really, really well. You can actually start to see that design pop even though we've just cleansed it. We haven't put top coat on or anything yet, just cleansed it. Now we are going to apply one more coat of our protein bond, and this is going to help our gel polish adhere really well to the top of our nail. So whether we're doing a solid color or whether we're doing just a top coat, make sure to always put a coat of your protein bond on. Now, when you're working over dimensional nails, using that extra coat of protein bond is also going to help to make that nail look more like glass. So you're going to really be able to see through that. You're going to really be able to see that glitter popping out. Okay, so let's grab a couple of our gel polishes. And you guys, I grabbed a whole bunch of different gel polish colors that I thought would go really well with this design. And I may use some of them, I may use all of them, but the colors that we've got here are Cold Plunge Face, we've got Hope GPS, Me Unicorn, and our last one is Lunch Hero. Actually, not our last one, our last blue. And then we also have Nerdvana, which is our white. So I am also going to grab my little art palette here. And you guys, I'm going to do just a really quick and easy look for our accent nail here. And I'm going to open up all of these. So I have them all ready to go. Now, with the look that I'm going to create here, you can work either right out of the gel polish bottles, or if it's easier for you, you can add a little bit of each of these colors to your tile. So it just depends on how you like to work and how you want to keep your product clean. So I think I'm actually going to add a little bit of each of these to my tile so that I don't contaminate my brushes. And the last color here. Okay, so we've got our colors, and I've also got my dual-ended brush and spatula. I'm not actually going to use the spatula end, I'm just going to use the brush end, but I like to show you guys that that's the tool that I'm working with here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a little bit of each of these colors. I'm kind of clean out my brush here just a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of each of the colors and just put them in random places. So just kind of feathering those colors on. Maybe grab some of those darker colors, adding those in, just kind of blending them through. Maybe a little bit of that darker blue. Oh yeah, I like that one. I'm going to get right up into that cuticle area, nice and close in there, blending that through. Maybe a little bit of that darker blue down at the bottom here, and maybe just a little touch right through there. Then I'm going to clean out my brush, clean that out on my tile. I don't have to get it completely clean, but then I'm just going to gently feather through, just kind of pulling through, and you'll see you'll get a little bit of those colors on your brush. That's okay, because that's kind of what we're actually going for. We're just trying to pull those colors together and just blend those together just very lightly. So again, just feathering my brush through, barely, almost not even touching that surface until you get that blend that you like. Okay, you guys, I really like how that's looking. Very icy, very cold, very wintry look. So I'm going to get this into our curing light, and I'm going to cure that for, I would say, a minimum of 30 seconds. Now, if you're working on a full client, I would have one hand in the light while you're working on the other. Now, whoops, I just stuck my finger in my gel polish. I'm going to add one last accent with this, and I'm going to use our white. And this again is called Nerdvana. So I'm going to just put a little bit of that white down onto our tile so that we can use it right off of there. Now, if you want different colors, you guys, we have so many beautiful colors of gel polish, and this white is going to be a great accent to all of those. But if we just want to add just a little bit of brightness to this, let me come in here. I'll grab just a tiny little bit of that white on my brush. And just, I might even turn my brush on the side. Just kind of feather that through a little bit. Just put some little streaks right in there. And then I'm going to clean out that excess out of my brush. Clean as much out of there as you can. And then again, just feathering that through. Gives it just those little bit of accents all the way through. Gives it a little more dramatic kind of a look. A little more almost texture in the nail. So just blending that through. All right, I think I like how that one is looking. I'm going to get that back into the light, and you guys will go ahead and top coat these. Now, if you're new to our channel and you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, join our community. If you are a veteran to our community here, let's go ahead and start the top coat chant in the chat. I feel like we haven't done that in a long time. So if you're new and you don't know what the top coat chant is, it's just basically typing in top coat, top coat, top coat. And that is our chant to top coat our nails. So I'm going to use two different top coats. I'm going to use just our traditional gel polish top coat on our dimensional nail, and then I'm going to use our matte non-tack on our color blend here. So this way you guys can see a couple of different options when you are finishing your nails. So again, our matte top coat. Somebody says it looks like denim. Yes, you guys, it actually really does. And if you kind of blend it out even a little bit more, you're going to definitely have that denim look. So yeah, you guys, I love to see what it's inspiring. So if you take my designs that I'm showing you here on our channel, create your own looks, use those techniques that I'm showing you. Make sure that you guys tag us. Make sure you tag Young Nails in your posts on your social media, because I love to see those. I love to see what you are creating with our inspiration. So make sure, tag Young Nails so that we can see exactly what you're creating. Okay, so this again is our matte top coat. And then we'll do our shiny top coat. Let me come in nice and close on these. Shiny top coat on our dimensional nail here. And you are going to really see once that top coat is on there, really see those glitters pop. So really see that beautiful icy look all the way through that nail. And I'm going to go ahead and cure these. Now you guys, both of our gel top coats here do take 60 seconds to fully cure in the light. When the matte top coat, actually when both of these top coats do cure out, they will be a tack free. So you can actually see it's a tack free top coat, and then our shiny one is also a tack free top coat. So you don't have to worry about cleansing anything once they have cured. Now, normally you guys, when I do my designs here on YouTube, I only freeze them in the light for about 30 seconds and then I'll show you the final look. But because we are using the matte non-tack, you don't get the highest matte until it's been fully cured. So I am going to leave this in here for just another few seconds so that I can show you that actual final look of our matte and our shiny together. In the meantime, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Show some love in the chat there, you guys. Thank you for all of that. I do appreciate seeing all of that in the chat. And I hope you guys have enjoyed our lesson today. I hope you will come back and join us again. We're usually here on YouTube a couple of times a week. We're actually, we also have a stream tomorrow on Whatnot, so make sure to join us there as well. But here are our two designs. And you guys, you could actually take this, and I'm going to show you a couple of options here that we don't quite have time for today, but you could do some beautiful sugared looks over the top of this. So if you take that matte design and you do a sugared look over the top of that, that's going to give you a beautiful look as well. And if you don't know what I mean by a sugared look, make sure to check out our channel here so that you can see those techniques as well. And we've got that beautiful glassy, icy dimensional nail on our second nail. So you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you guys showing the love in the chat. I appreciate you guys subscribing to our channel, and we will see you guys back next time. Thanks, everyone.